This is my 1991 Saab 900 Turbo interior. And this is the radio. It actually has bare bones functionality, but there's some key issues that make it impossible to use. And that's the fact that these buttons work sometimes, whenever they want to. For example, there's a code that I need to put in for this radio, and I kept pressing away at the buttons for the last year that I've owned the car, and only recently did they finally work. And that's how I managed to turn the radio on here. And now I can't tune it. I've now put the radio in cassette mode, and that noise you're hearing is the radio trying to receive the cassette, but it's not pushing in, it's not playing, it's just kind of sitting there. This is a convertible, it's an automatic, it's a turbo, it's a cruising car, and you kind of need a radio for a cruising car. So in today's video, I'm going to try and fix that. It really seems like it wants to work, as you can see by these lights, and this car sat outside in a field for 5 years and got moldy and got moisture in the car, and these things are meant to be stored indoors, so it's a miracle that it even works as much as it does. I've never done any kind of electronics repair, I've never done any soldering, so this is all new for me, but I figure the best place to start is just by taking things apart. There is a repair manual available online on the saabclarion.se website, but it's more like circuit board diagrams, so it's not very helpful to my issues here. And as you can see, my radio is filled with corrosion, so that's definitely a big part of why the cassette player doesn't work. The intermittent functionality of the buttons led me to jump to the conclusion that the buttons themselves were probably bad, and maybe corrosion got inside of them, and that's why they only work sometimes. As you can see later on, this was kind of the wrong assumption, but I mean, in hindsight, I can see why I thought that was the issue. Given my lack of experience and knowledge, I honestly just started taking things apart, hoping to find something visually wrong. And I sorted the screws out in this tray here and made videos along the way to remember which piece went where. For my base knowledge, to me, the cassette player was the first order of business because the problem that I'm seeing there is corrosion, and that's something I'm fairly familiar with. There's like a cassette deck assembly independent of the rest of the radio, and you have to unplug things, unscrew things, and then it just pulls right out, as you can see. If you know anything about cassette players, you'll see something glaringly missing right here. What was missing, you might ask? Well, it's actually this black sticky stuff that's all over everything, and that's the belts that drive the cassette player, and they were completely disintegrated, and they've turned into a tarry kind of substance all over everything. You can see here that the belts are actually stuck onto the cover plate rather than around the pulleys where they should be. This thing was absolutely filled with rust, and to 99% of people, this is just a parts radio, but I had a lot of time on my hands, and I was interested to learn more about these units, so I was willing to put in the hours and try and fix it. These Saab Clarion radios are held together with a lot of these E-clips, and they go flying, so I'd recommend buying a bunch of them before you start. What you should do in a situation like this is take everything apart, put it in a chemical bath or something, sandblast it, I don't know, take big steps. What I did instead is I just put some WD-40 on it and sanded it and just moved it back and forth until the rust broke free to the point that it would barely function. This point in dismantling, I made a crucial mistake when I broke this black plastic cog here, and that kind of ended up ruining the entire project. Remember, the cassette player wasn't the only issue, so while I fixed that, I'm also taking steps to ensure that the circuit board is okay by cleaning it with some alcohol. At this point, I also start to remove these buttons, because remember, I think that's the problem here. And here's another look at that cog once it's removed. I looked online, these aren't commercially available, and there's nothing that matches it. So it turns out that I had to CAD one myself and 3D print it myself. This dowel having play in it right here means that my cassette player will never work properly because the gear just moves out of place and doesn't engage. Thankfully, this is only for the return mechanism, so I'm probably going to put like a phone adapter in there and I'll just never be able to eject it. Basically, in this project, the only thing I actually got done and was productive with was putting these new belts on to the cassette pulleys. My biggest mistake here was pulling out the buttons. At the beginning of this project, I didn't really know how to desolder, so I was not fully releasing the buttons, and I ended up ripping out PCB traces along with the buttons when I removed them. I tried to repair those traces, but it was in vain. Ultimately, I broke open some of these buttons and there was no corrosion or anything, and I honestly think just reflowing the solder to them probably would have fixed my issue. Even though, like I said earlier, my radio is just parts radio quality, since it's original to the car, I'm going to try and buy another parts radio and fix this later on. At the end of the day, I learned a lot from this. I learned to solder, which is going to be useful for other future projects, and it was a good experience. For now though, I'm probably just going to buy a new radio. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.